to the official podcast for Attack of the Doc. I am sitting here with Zach Selwyn, a.k.a. Zachary Selwyn, a.k.a. Zach Selwyn from Attack of the Show.
Three different people.
Right. Zach, you and I kind of came onto Attack, I want to say around the same time. I mean, you were early days Attack of the Show. I started in March 2005. When did you come into Attack, and did you have an awareness of Attack of the Show before you became a regular?
I had no idea what Attack of the Show was when I got the audition. I was like, what is Attack of the Show? What is G4? You know, where am I going? I'm going to Olympic and Bundy on a Tuesday at 2 o'clock for an on-camera audition? Okay. I was really bummed. I had just done a pilot for ESPN in New York. I spent a month there. Like, they had a house rented for me. Like, I was going to be the Carson Daly of sports. I was like, oh, this will be great. And it was a cool variety show I was hosting, and it didn't get picked up. My wife was pregnant. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. What's next? And I got the call from this guy, Brendan Blinko, casting director. And he's like, dude, you got to go. Your name came up for this audition. It's called Attack of the Show. So I was like, what? I'm like, all right. So I kind of went down there. It's probably like a little underwhelmed, thinking, I went from ESPN to what is G4? And I went to the audition, and it went really, really well. And as I walked out, a girl I knew from college who worked there was like, I heard you did great. Congratulations. This is going to be awesome. And I was like, what? What is this show? I still didn't know. And it took a while for it to really settle in for me to figure out what Attack of the Show was, what G4 was, what kind of programming this was, you know. And then once I did, I was like, oh, this is awesome.
Now, when did you realize that Attack of the Show was something bigger than some of your previous gigs, like getting recognized?
Yeah.
People who were fans of the show coming up to you in public?
Yeah, there started to be a little bit of that, you know, as I started going on the road and more pieces kept coming in and being on the show every day. You start to see people in airports go, oh, hey, Zach Selwyn, what's up, dude? Attack of the Show. Tell Olivia I love her, man. You know, people stopping you to buy beers a lot, you know, in bars. People just, you know, really approaching you about stuff like, oh, man, have you heard about the Xbox that's coming out? Or the PS3, I think, was the hot thing coming out. And I would always be like, yeah, it looks cool, you know. And then people would come to me for this sort of knowledge, which I didn't really have at first. You know, I got to know it as the show went on. You just live in that world for that long, you pick stuff up. But yeah, I remember going to the iPhone launch was a big one, because when the iPhone was launched in 2006, I was sent to New York to the Apple Store for the big like premiere and launch of the iPhone, and we were in line there, and I think we might have been one of 2 or 3 camera crews there, and we were getting like hounded by fans, like just running up to us, wanting to be on camera, wanting me to interview them, you know. And that was really cool. But I remember that being a big day for me, and I forget who I was there with, maybe Will O'Neill. We were both like, dude, this is pretty huge. And little did we know the iPhone would change the entire freaking world, you know, eventually.
Well, it's interesting, you know, like technologically speaking, in a sense, Attack of the Show from 2005 to when it ended in early 2013, it really paralleled like the rise of technology being a ubiquitous part of your life, just something you could not escape. So it was weird, like seeing I remember when I started on Attack of the Show, I think I had a Razor.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, you had a Razor. I had a T-Mobile Sidekick. Do you remember that thing?
Yes. Well, at least that had a keyboard. With the Razor, right. You still had to type out with text messages with the. You know, the
T9 word.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, T9 word. Remember that?
Yeah.
You're right. When we started at Attack, we had Razors, T-Mobile Sidekicks, and that was high tech at the time. And then like Will was doing the tech stuff, and he always like throw me an old phone. He's like, use this. And then I do, Samsung, killer, flip phone, awesome. You know, and then cut to 2 years later, and my whole world's on my phone. You know, and that was totally at the same time Attack of the Show was peaking. You know, that's a good point. I mean, technology really was climbing and becoming ubiquitous at that time.
Yeah, I mean, Attack of the Show kind of paralleled this rise of technology now being like something that was unavoidable. I mean, most people had mobile phones by that point, but now mobile phones are for everything, from ordering food to Google Maps to...
I mean, you can direct a film on a phone, man.
We're doing this on a phone right now.
We're using a phone right now. I mean, that's what's so crazy about it is that, you know, the amount of excitement for the technology that was coming out was so high. But I think now, I know in my business and a lot of my friends' business in LA, jobs are gone. I mean, photographers, editors, DPs, you know, music. I mean, everything has just changed so much in that time. And I'm not like to say get off my lawn, but it's like, you know, I know a lot of people who made their dreams came true. They're making a living doing what they love to do. And then this phone comes out and guess what? You don't need a graphic designer anymore. Download that app where you can design your own poster and you're good. You know, you don't need to hire that expensive photographer. Just put a little filter on this thing, you know, click. Hey, that's a good headshot. I mean, I've seen guys take headshots on these things, you know,
and
like
news photography's gone.
News photography's gone. Yeah. I mean, a lot of these industries are gone. I mean, seriously, who knew that, you know, being a TV personality or whatever, you could have called me on Attack of the Show when I was like, hey guys, it's Zach, welcome. Guess what? Today we're going to try out the new, you know, vanilla ice cream from Kerr Honeymoon. This is incredible. It's got original Jersey cow milk and no preservatives. Now you have people doing that like this. Hey guys, what's up? It's Tiff Amberly, and okay, so today's tutorial, we are going to drink some of this Jersey cow, right? Like, it's basically what we were doing, but now everyone's doing it on Instagram and on, you know,
Do you think in a way
YouTube.
that Attack of the Show had an influence on a generation of YouTubers and basically showed you could, because everyone on Attack was, I mean, very few people from Attack of the Show were professional TV hosts. I mean, you were one of the most experienced coming in. Everyone was plucked. I mean, Kevin Pereira from being an intern on Arena, and other people like, you know, that were just fans of that thing that suddenly are like, now go on camera and talk about that. Like, what do you think about that? Did that inspire like a generation of YouTubers?
I would say the Attack of the Show model inspired a lot of YouTubers and a lot of Instagrammers now. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, people said, oh, we learned this from watching you guys. I mean, I'm sure that's a thing, like, especially with the gamers. I mean, man, I mean, I couldn't believe that people would watch people play video games in 2007. Now it's all my son does. His whole life is watching other people play games, you know. Tell me that wasn't an Attack of the Show original idea back in the day, you know.
Now, what do you think is? I want to talk like your best and worst moments on the show, both personally and then ones that didn't involve you. I mean, do you have recollections of things you could say, "Oh, this was the best," or "This was"?
The travel. I mean, the best moments of Attack of the Show were the travel for me. I mean, I got to see the world, Tokyo, a few times, Hong Kong, you know, Canada, lovely little country. New York a million times, Chicago, meeting a lot of celebrities, you know, it's always cool. Like, suddenly you're hanging out with Will Ferrell and Sacha Baron Cohen in a hotel and Russell Brand in Hawaii. Like, what's going on? This is like surreal. And I would kind of tell people, like, I have the best job in the world. I get paid to travel and like hang out with people and drink and be funny. Like, this is a pretty good gig. Those are good memories. I loved when I got a chance to sort of explore the sketch comedy side of my life. I mean, my creative side. Like, basically what happened was I would talk to John Ryber, who was the VP and great guy, really supportive, and he'd say, hey, why don't you make some sketch comedy stuff? So I'd go out and make like little SNL sketches, and they were all really good. I mean, I thought one of them I'd reshoot. But I loved that. That was a highlight for me because I got to do like my own little sketch comedy like studio. I had like a little SNL I was running. I could hire all my friends and, you know, put Kevin in them and Olivia in them, and, you know, we did some good stuff like Vodka and a Stapler is great. A Wire Cologne. I don't know if you remember that one. Starring, rest in peace, my boy John Walsh. Get a little shot of that business card right there. I just found this in my drawer. Isn't that funny? Writer Creative Services, John Walsh. Gone too soon.
Yeah, I knew John. I knew John oddly in the 90s.
Really?
He was doing stuff for Film Thread. That's why. So it's weird coming in because I knew people in the space, and then it's like, oh my god, they all Attack the Show kind of collected.
Yes.
Nerds.
I mean, it was amazing to see people like Kevin Rubio in The Office. Kevin did Troops, the great Star Wars cops short film. or drama, spoof thing. Fuck, it was so good. And I'm like, wait, Kevin Rubio is like right there. I know who that guy is, And then, Chris Gore is here. And we had met like a year before at South by Southwest because I was in some horror movie and on ESPN, and you like recognized me and we started chatting, Then John, coming from his background. Mm-hmm. And just, everyone around us was gathered from like this collective of smart, before their time kind of minds. I wouldn't say nerds, but I'd say, creative types and people who are interested in tech and entertainment and, everything that we covered, video games.
How are things different now in terms of like right around when Attack first started to technologically today?
Yeah, well, when Attack of the Show started, technology was nowhere near where it is now, obviously. The biggest thing being, in my opinion, when the internet got fast. The internet for a while was just, it's fun. I can go to mulletsgalore.com and look at 10 different mullets and laugh at this guy who curated mullets. Wow, I love the internet. Wow. Now you don't have to leave your house. It's a weird world, man. It's just changing. I'd say things have changed immensely. The world's flipped in these 13 years or whatever it's been.
Would you say the show grew with the internet?
Yeah, I'd say the show grew with the internet and the show grew with technology. And one thing I do remember was I had 60,000 MySpace friends, and I was like, I'm the king of MySpace. And I would go through and answer every message, I was like, this is going to last forever. And then Facebook comes out, and I was like, I can't do one more thing. Then it was Twitter. I'm like, nah. And I just kind of was like, I'm done. Can't it just end at MySpace? No. And it kept going and going. And so that's like, by the time I had left Attack of the Show, MySpace was dead. And I think Facebook was hot for a while. And then Twitter came out. And then everything else, Vine and Snapchat and Instagram and all that. But
now it's like these social networks. What happens is each generation kind of rejects the previous social networks, and now TikTok is the big thing now.
Well, TikTok made here I am. I've had a band for almost 20 years, and then you just kind of see how your band goes from, we sell a bunch of CDs. At one point, that was awesome. I would make $400. Every couple gigs, like selling CDs. Then that stops, and then you try to sell MP3s. Now the iTunes store is dead, or the Apple store, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And now you have Lil Nas X on TikTok. Someone does a dance to his song, and the dude's got 400 billion, whatever. It's like the number one of all time streaming song. Like took over Gangnam Style maybe, and that's just from TikTok. That's crazy. Like who knows? It's such a shot in the dark.
Well, tell me about like the people that you work with. It was surprising to me, having worked on a lot of previous shows, and I will say that Attack is the least money I ever made in television. It just kept on this from the 90s to like doing shows on like FX and everything. It just kept my paycheck getting smaller. But Attack was the first time I remember being hired for a show where they wanted me to be me rather than to make an image. Did you have a similar, what I'm asking is, did you have a similar experience to myself where it's just like, no, we're hiring you because of you. We're not hiring you and then we're going to mold you to what the network wants. I'm not going to mention previous shows I did, but like I do remember like going in and just feeling humiliated. Like they're just like, we want to hip you up, but these are the clothes you're going to wear. I don't think like from when I knew you before to like being on the show and even knowing you like off the show, you're kind of no different other than like, when you're on camera, you're on, but like, well, actually, when you're just hanging out, you're kind of on. But you know what I mean? Like,
well, no, that's a good point. I was definitely hired to be me, and that was really cool because at ESPN, the last thing they wanted was for me to be me. When I was on ESPN, there was like controversy because I had long hair and I was like a little off the cuff and I was wearing like a nudie suit on camera, and they're like, what is this idiot doing? And I get it. They have an image. They wanted to mold you into this clean cut, short hair. Hi, guys. All of a sudden you find yourself... let's go to Cleveland where LeBron James was in fine form tonight. 36 points for the young rookie, Whereas at Attack of the Show, I could say whatever I wanted and be whatever I wanted to be and wear whatever I wanted to wear and say what I wanted. You had scripts, but they encouraged the improvisation. So I love that. That was like absolutely a good point. I was hired to be Zach, I guess, to say it in the third person, but and I forget how someone recommended me for this. Neil Tiles, the old president, told me this story once. Someone at NFL Network was a big fan of the show I was on. It was like when he heard that whoever I replaced, Brendan, right, was leaving, he goes, get that guy. So thanks, my man, whoever you are. That was a good run. I want to say his name was John. John, my dude.
Tell me also about the people that you and I both worked with. But there would be pairings when you would host the show, guest co-host or whatever they had you do. Can you what stories can you recount about Kevin, Olivia, people you worked with? Are there stories that you could tell about each of those, kind of like sort of a best moment or even a worst moment? Because from my experience, and I'm sure yours was similar, that I got along with everybody. Like there was very little drama, on
there was
that show.
I'll say I got along with everybody at Attack of the Show as well, but there was a lot of drama that I saw between other people. I won't say anything, but
You
Kevin.
can say it. Yeah, of course. Now's the time.
Well, I will say this: when I first met Kevin Pereira, I was blown away by the fact that the guy was like 24 and had knowledge of stuff that no one his age should have. He was dipping into references from like the late 70s that like Dennis Miller would make, and I was like, wow, this guy's got some of the deepest references I've ever seen. Like, I'm pretty good. Like, I can reference a lot of stuff. This guy's as good, if not better than me. One of the quickest hosts I've ever seen. Quickest on his feet. Funniest. I mean, I was really impressed with that guy. And I was like, man, well, that dude's incredible. And he is. And he still is. And, that was my impression of Kevin. And he was always very nice. I remember like my first or second day on the job, he came up to me. He goes, hey, let's go to lunch. We went out to this Mexican restaurant. And he's like, look, you're going to love this job. He goes, this is what G4 is. This is what Attack of the Show is. This is who you need to placate to. You're going to go to Japan. You're going to travel the world. You're going to do this. You're going to be on camera. It's going to be awesome. And I was like, wow, cool. Thanks. Thanks for the welcoming hug, I love that moment with him. And everything he said was right, And so that was I have nothing but good love for him, man. Same with Will. Will O'Neill and I hit it off. We got to travel a lot together. They paired us up in like Japan, and they sent us to a baseball game and to sing karaoke, and I mean we had some really good times. Just everything I remember was I spent a lot of time with the producers on the road, and sometimes it gets uncomfortable. I mean, I think one of my first shots, God, I remember this. All right, so here we are. Remember, I have a newborn baby. All right, I have a 3-month-old baby. My wife just gave birth. I have this job. And I am covering Playboy After Dark, Playboy TV. They send me to the set of Playboy After Dark. I don't know where this footage is, but I hope it burns. I mean, I had these naked women basically rubbing up against me and sitting on my crotch and just being like, hey, what's up, bitches? It's Jessie Jane from Playboy After Dark, and we're going to give Zach a lap dance. And I'm like, can we cut? And I was like, we got to... That was a bad moment. I was like, I just had a baby. Like, I'm happily married. What is going on? And the producers were like, come on, no. Just play along with it. Play along. I'm like, no. That was a tough one. I mean, I can see if I was 22, that might have been fun, but...
Are there things that happened on the show that you think you could never do that on TV now?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. There's so much stuff that we couldn't get away with. I don't think we could have gone to Playboy After Dark and had... I don't think we could have... I used to go to all the porn conventions in Vegas. They would send me out there to interview all the porn stars at the AVNs. That was horrifying. Just like, all right, we're talking with Cassidy Ray. She's nominated tonight for Double Anal and Best Penetration Scene. Cassidy, how do you feel? And what an honor, huh? I mean...
The ESPN delivery.
See? I learned something there. So I would do those things and they'd be like, we are just so excited to be here at the AVNs. And then they'd see a friend across the room and they'd go, lick my tits! Woo! Ha, bitch! You're such a slut! Alexis Texas is a slut! Ah! Back to the so Cassidy... I mean... That's shit we would do. That probably wouldn't be allowed on TV. I did a lot of on-camera drinking back then. I did a lot of like, hey, I went to the Denver Beer Festival, and basically they're like, you're going to try a beer from every single booth, and then you're going to do a blood alcohol test. And I think I blew like a .28. Like I was legally dead. You can't do that on camera anymore. I mean, I really did. I mean, I was like, going down the line. This is pretty good. It's a hoppy IPA. It's more of a tender. By the end, I'm like, this is a Kolsch. It's pretty good. You know? And then I'm .28. Like medics were called in.
Like what's legal is .08?
.08 is that's above. That's the limit.
Some's .05.
Yeah.
Jesus. Yeah, so that, I don't think we could have got away with that kind of stuff. I mean, it was always uncomfortable doing all the sex stuff, but, you know, that was a big part of it. I mean, we were also ahead of the game in the weed space. I mean, we did the 420 special every year. You know, we go to Toronto and interview, like, people in the legal grow houses. Of course, now it's all legal, but, I mean, someone went to Amsterdam. I didn't get to go there, but that looked pretty cool. But, you know, there's a lot of that. There was a lot of... I think those are the main things we probably couldn't get away with today on TV, especially in, you know, it's a sensitive time in Hollywood and in entertainment and everything, and the world, really. And there's a lot of stuff that's out there from my Attack of the Show days that I kind of look at and I'm like, oh, God, I said that?
Well, it's interesting. I think definitely the culture has become more puritanical. You know, if you look at sort of waves of like it's things get very liberal, then they get very conservative. I think we're living through kind of an oddly conservative era today. And you look at Attack the Show, I don't think we could get away with doing those things because, especially with, you know, the Twitterverse, right? You know.
Oh, absolutely not.
It would be. Yeah, you look at some of those old segments and it's like, yeesh, like...
Well, so Kevin Pereira and I, we used to do a thing called the MySpace Girl of the Week, where we would go on MySpace and we'd just choose a good-looking girl. And we'd be like, all right, so this is Jennifer. She's 24. She's from Myrtle Beach. She likes... Oh, look at this bikini shot, Kevin. Huh? Yeah. I mean, what is that? Like, that's... I guess back then that was funny. But I was like, I can't believe that was a segment we used to do. You know?
Right.
I remember Anna David, the sex expert, would come on and talk with Olivia Munn about sex and, let's say, a threesome. And then they'd have me come in and be like, how do you feel about threesomes? And I'm like, you know. What? Like, they're never quite what you expect. Like I had any experience. But, you know, would that be something? I mean, that's why Attack of the Show was so cool, because it did cover all these aspects of things. But yeah, I don't think we can get away with all that stuff today. No way. Yeah. Not in this time. Yeah. You know?
What about some of your experiences working with the female co-hosts on the show?
I really got to enjoy working with Olivia Munn. At points, she could be she knew she was going to be a star very early on. I remember the first time I met her, she's like, so you were just on this show on ESPN. Okay, I heard about that. That's cool. And you did this show, Extreme Dodgeball. I heard about that. That's pretty cool. I was in a Rob Schneider movie. I'm going to be a movie star. I was like, you were in a Rob Schneider movie? I was in The Hot Chick. I was like, oh, okay. And lo and behold, she did it. I mean, I don't know how she did it, but she did it. And it's a fucking tough game. I mean, I've been out here acting for 20 years and hosting and trying to get anywhere you can get. And she's been in some pretty big stuff, you know. I mean, couldn't be more proud of her. And we don't stay in touch after the affair. Just kidding.
What is it about? Like, I felt the same way you felt. Like, when I met Olivia, I thought, oh, she's going to be big.
Yeah. Well, the first day I met Olivia Munn, I was like, that's the most beautiful human being I've ever met in person. Just, you see her in person and you're like, what? You exist? You're real? And then, you know, as I was going more in the field, I didn't see as much of the day-to-day drama in the studios. But I heard there was drama. I heard there was always like who's got the top billing. Maybe there was a little headbutting between Olivia and Layla Kaylee at times. Layla was an awesome girl who did the feed. But I don't know. I mean, I think there's a lot of boundaries there. And from what I remember at Attack of the Show, Olivia knew she wanted to be a star. And she was very good at getting noticed. And she was good at what she did. And, you know, she ended up a freaking movie star. Rock on, you know. I've been in some movies. None you've ever seen. I was in Battleship.
Who did you meet from via Attack of the Show that you got to? I'm just baiting you a little bit because I know you met like Seth Rogen, people like that. Can you recount some of the stories of some of the famous people that you've had the opportunity to meet?
Yeah, one of my favorite hang out with a famous person story is Comic-Con, like 2006 or 7. Superbad, which Carrie Keegan and I were in as extras, and we were supposed to like kiss in the scene, and then I had to leave early, and we all got cut out of the movie, which was depressing. I gave you a DVD of the set visit, by the way. But so Seth Rogen and Jonah Hill and myself, we all had Jufros at the time, and I was like, "Hey guys, we're 3 Jufros," and they thought that was funny and kind of welcomed me into their circle. And Seth Rogen was a big fan of Attack of the Show. And I was hosting a American Ninja Warrior Challenge on Attack of the Show at that point. Another show that has since gone on without me. Shout out Matt Eisman, that's my dude. But he was like, dude, I love that American Ninja Warrior stuff, you know. Anyway, we started hanging out. And so at Comic-Con, he's like, hey, Zach, what's up, man? You know, next thing you know, it's about 1 a.m. at a E! Entertainment weekly party. And I don't remember how it went, but at some point, Seth Rogen passed a joint to Method Man from the Wu-Tang Clan, who then passed a joint to me. And then I think I passed it on, and maybe Seth got it back, but I was like, holy shit, I just smoked weed with Seth Rogen and the fucking Method Man? I was like, this night's done. I'm like, I'm good. I might need to never smoke weed again. I may not need to ever smoke weed again. So yeah, that was cool. I definitely thought Seth Rogen and I were going to be really good friends at one point. I was like, this guy loves me. And, you know, at times he'd like see me at a Four Seasons press junket and be like, hey, you know, high five me and catch up for a second. Last time I ran into him, he was working on End of the World, whatever that movie was he did. And I was at Sony for like a voiceover job. And I was like, do you remember me, man? And he was like, oh yeah. You know, and he was really cool. Just like remembered me, but you know, that was cool. Another guy I met up in Canada was Jason Momoa, and we hung out for like a year or two. We were like good buddies. Now this dude was the nicest, coolest guy ever. And it's a funny story. I wrote a short story about it on my blog, actually. But so I meet him because we did a set visit to Stargate Atlantis, which I got to go to Vancouver. And not only that, I did a song. I wrote a song about Stargate Atlantis, about how much I love the show. Never seen it before in my life. I just basically bullshitted it. And everyone up there saw it, and they're like, let's give this guy a small part on the show. So I went up there, and I filmed the part, and I got to do a set visit, and I'm interviewing Jason Momoa, and he's like, you're pretty cool, man. You want to get a beer later? And I was like, yeah, sure. So we go out, and we ended up having, like, friends come over. You know, we're eating dinner, food's coming in, beers are being drank, his friends kind of take off. Bill comes. It's like $700. And he just goes, shit, man, I left my wallet in my house, dude. You got this? And I was like, wait, what? I'm like, you're the one on the show. Like, he's like, aren't you on a show too? I'm like, yeah, but I'm on Attack of the Show. You're on TV. You're on Stargate Atlantis. So I ended up covering a $700 bar bill for me and Jason Momoa. And he was really grateful. And he's like, let's go back to my place, man. So we ended up like going back to his crazy apartment that he had like gutted and had like a leather swing in there and like everything you would think about Jason Momoa, like spears, you know, like he was living like this crazy off the reservation dude. And like he didn't write his script that he showed me. It was like in calligraphy, you know, like he's just one of those dudes. Believes in the natural part of life. And played him some of my music. He dug it. Hung out, and then like a year later I went back to Vancouver for something. I'm like, hey, you want to hang out? He's like, yeah, man. And at this point I'm thinking, he's gonna give me the money back, right? No, basically we went out to drinks. Like at the end of the night he's like, yo, I left my wallet in my place. And I was like, what, again? This one was all like $100-something. So Jason, my dude, Venmo me, brother. Just like a couple hundy. Venmo me some Aquaman money. But I'm happy that guy. I mean, he was a really cool guy. He like would send me books I should read and music I should hear. Got me into some great shit. So I got love for that guy. That was a very cool guy I met through Attack of the Show.
what was a typical day like on Attack of the Show? And I mean, explain this for people who don't work in television,
Okay.
don't understand, or don't have an awareness of the process and how it works. So, like, you're, say, hosting the show.
Okay.
A typical day is you get up and, soup to nuts. What is a day on the show like?
From what I remember, a day on Attack of the Show when you were in studio hosting, which I got to do a bunch of times, was get there a little earlier to do a read through. And then the table read would take an hour and some change because it was an hour long show. And you'd make some notes and you'd say, oh, we have Jay Chandrasekhar coming on today. Cool. Love Super Troopers. We're going to do a live interview with some guy who invented the Wii or something would come on. So you get all the things down that you're going to do during the day. And then, you might read through it a couple times and make some notes and then kind of just go to makeup and hair and go to lunch and then come back for the live taping, which I think was 3 to 4? Or was it 4 to 5? It was 4 to 5. All right, it was 4 to 5 every day. So yeah, you just come back around 3 for blocking and all that. And you'd go from like, all right, so you're going to look at camera 1 here, then you're going to go to camera 2, then you're going to walk over here and you're going to join Kevin at the table. And you guys are going to do the MySpace Girl of the Week. And then you'd go through each segment. That's what I remember. And then most of the time, though, I didn't do that. I mean, I got to host a bunch of times, but I would come in to do my segment. So if I had gone to the Denver Beer Festival, I would come on and be like, so I spent the weekend in Denver, Colorado at the Denver Beer Festival. Take a look. And then we'd go to the package. And then they'd come back and Olivia would be like, so Zach, that looked fun. Wow, you drink a lot at that Denver Beer. I'm like, yes, I'm the Tara Reid of Attack of the Show. Thank you. And then they'd say, all right, coming up, we have the feed. Right? And then that would be it for me. So if I went on at 4:20, let's just say, and I was out by 4:30, sometimes that was my whole day. I would just come in for makeup, hair, and a segment and leave.
It's funny how much, if you look at YouTube now, how many shows try to mirror that kind of format, or some of those formalities, which really aren't actually necessary on you. You could just cut to the content, but there are shows on YouTube that do try to sort of take that style and make it work for themselves.
Yeah, I have not watched enough shows on YouTube that mimic or are similar to Attack of the Show. I sometimes I see my kid watching some of that stuff, and I'm like, oh, this is exactly what we used to do. But there's also a lot of stuff like segments that became shows elsewhere. Like, remember, oh my God, I love science or whatever it is. I love effing science. Mm-hmm. Like, didn't that become a show? Became a spinoff? I mean, G4, we had American Ninja Warrior on our channel. I was hosting it, and then now it's on NBC, and it's a 12-year or 12-season, spectacular. Like, that was ahead of its time.
You have a lot of TV experience. You came into Attack with previous TV experience. Many of the people on camera, their only TV experience, Kevin, Adam Sessler, and some of the people on the show, their only TV experience was being on G4. So, but you came in with, how did Attack of the Show differ from other shows that you had been on?
Attack of the Show is different for me because, like I said a little bit earlier, it let me be myself. It let me be Zach out doing Zach things. Before that I had done a lot of, like, mainly acting, but hosting-wise, ESPN was very straight and narrow, and, like, this is what you do, you're by the book. And now if you look at sports casting, and I don't know who's going to be paying attention to sports, who listens to this or watches this doc, but sports are now becoming more personality-driven, and you can become a funny YouTube or Instagram sports guy and get away with wearing whatever you want. You don't have to follow that ESPN model. That model's kind of dying. I mean, it's still, no one like watches SportsCenter the way they used to, where it was like, you need that information. Every night, at 6, you had to go get your scores. Now it's on your phone right there. You don't need to go watch it every day. So my son watches these personalities, which was what I was kind of doing back then. And then Attack of the Show was the first place that really was like, hey, you come on and be yourself and just, go have fun. Since then, I've done a bunch of shows where it's back to a little more buttoned down. Like, for instance, Guinness World Records, which was on True TV. Small flex. They're like, no facial hair. You're wearing a suit, short hair. You represent Guinness. Guinness is a legitimate worldwide brand, and they cared deeply about how they were portrayed. Whereas Attack of the Show was like, yeah, you can bring your guitar on and write a song about, Kristen Adams. What was her name? What was her original name? That's her married name. Kristen Holt. They're like, you can go write a song about how much you have a crush on Kristen Holt. I'm like, okay. The History Channel shows I've done might be more akin to Attack of the Show because it was a little more, here's the information you have to get out, but make it funny or make it watchable. So Attack was the first time I was really given a chance to have fun,
You also had experience, for many people on Attack the Show, when the show ended, it was their first job in television, and it's remarkable that the show lasted for, almost 8 years. It was almost 8, not quite 8 years. But, I started, actually the first 3 episodes I did were screensavers. Then in March of 2005, it became Attack of the Show. They renamed it Attack of the Show, which went all the way through. Well, actually, it went through the beginning of 2013, but they had filmed everyone out by the end of 2012. And for a lot of people who worked there, it was their first experience in television, so it was a little different, I think, for people like you and I who had previously done shows and we'd kind of seen the end, or like we were on a show and then the show lasted. I mean, I was the king of doing shows that lasted 2 seasons.
Yeah, me too.
So what were your thoughts? There are 2 things. One, your experience, like they didn't renew your contract. I think I know a little bit about, I think it was a cost issue. Like with anything in TV, it ends up being like this cost issue, right? Like,
certainly.
What was your experience on the end of the show and how it ended?
My time at Attack of the Show ended when my second year contract came up. At the end of my second year, and what I had been hearing was they had just done a rebrand. They did the whole TV that's plugged in rebrand. They had moved the office from Olympic and Bundy to 5750 Wilshire in Miracle Mile District. The studio was a third of the size. I think there were less writers. They took down a lot of people in the merge, like whatever it was, the move, the transition. A lot of people, my friend Ian Edelman was no longer there. Ian's now a director for Netflix movies, doing great, But I remember when he left, I was like, oh, I really like that guy. He was good on the field with me. And I noticed other field producers weren't getting hired as much. And I was like, what's going on? And then I kept hearing, oh, it's a budget thing. Now, I'm not saying I definitely wasn't making the most money, but I was making pretty good money there. And I think from what I heard was that when my contract came up, there was a little bit of here's a chance to get rid of that. It sounds like baseball, if you're a baseball player and you're at the end of your contract, or basketball, you got to dump the contract, It's a little bit of a trade Solomon Hill, to the Pelicans kind of thing for, it's a deep cut for an NBA reference there, but that's what I heard. But I was really bummed out because I had a meeting with John Ryber and he was like, look, because you've done great here. We love you here. He goes, I'm going to give you 6 months. I'm going to give you 6 months. I'm going to extend you for 6 months. And he goes, that way you can start looking for other stuff because I know you'll get something. And that was really nice of him. So I got the last 6 months I was there was really not the most active time for me at Attack of the Show. I was kind of doing a lot of press junkets and there wasn't as much travel. That was the other thing I noticed. Like when I first started there, I was traveling all over the place. And then the last 6 months I was there, I barely went anywhere. And so you start to think, oh, maybe this is a budget thing. Maybe there is but who knows? Luckily, I bounced right back and got into another show a couple months later. But it was a bummer. I remember I was talking to Morgan, co-host of X-Play, Morgan Webb. We were all talking. I go, yeah, I don't know. I'm like, I just got this thing. I'm like, what's going to happen? She goes, oh, one day you'll just come into the garage and your key card won't work. And I was like, okay. But again, like you said, I'd been on shows that had been canceled. shows that I thought were going to go 10 years that lasted 1 year. The ESPN thing was more of a heartbreak for me because that was one I really thought was like a big break for me. And I was like, this is going to be the thing. I'm going to move to New York City. This is going to be my life. And then this is a tricky business, you know? You just can never count on anything.
Can you identify like a favorite moment of hanging out with people from the show, not on the show, like just out at like what was the place where we'd always go? Busby's.
Busby's, yeah.
Busby's on Wilshire, which is this sort of, you know, just a
crappy
grill.
little grill sports bar.
Yeah, it's a little sports bar, but that would be the place because it was just, you know, blocks down from where we shot Attack of the Show on Wilshire. That was the place. Everyone was going to Busby's. I just remember that the food there was average.
I wasn't really a Busby's guy. I was more of a get home to the family guy at that point. Again, I had a 1-year-old, you know. Mm-hmm. Staying out and happy houring when I was in LA wasn't as big of a thing. When I was on the road is when I had all my fun. Some of my best nights, Will O'Neill, Vinny Rutherford, and me, New York City, staying out till like 7 in the morning and getting on like an 8 a.m. flight. And the flight attendant looking at me and Will and just going, oh boy, what happened here, guys? You know, Tahoe casinos with Vinny Rutherford till 5 in the morning. My friend Brenton Metzler and I, we went to the Office convention in Scranton, hung out there with super Office fans, you know, at like weird bars in the middle of nowhere, you know, being in Kansas City, visiting a haunted house and just being like, where are we? And you like go into a bar, like everything, you don't really know what to do on the road. So you end up in a lot of bars, you know, a lot of hotel bars. One of my better nights was Gavin Purcell, who was the EP when I started there, who ended up doing great things with Jimmy Fallon. And when I got to Tokyo, he could tell I was a little down. He's like, hey man, come here. He's like, I know, you have a baby. You're all the way over here. He goes, hang in there, man. You know. He's like, my advice is to go out and like stay up as late as you can tonight, get drunk, and then wake up tomorrow, you'll be fine. And I was like, thanks, man. That's great advice. Thanks, Gavin. You want to talk about, now here's an interesting thing. When Gavin Purcell, now Gavin's a great dude, great producer. Jimmy Fallon basically was a fan of Attack of the Show and took Gavin to run the Jimmy Fallon Tonight Show. Right? And if you watch Jimmy Fallon's first couple seasons, you were like, oh, this has some similarities. And I was like, good for him. At least someone made something good out of it, you know?
Well, it's funny because I met Jimmy Fallon when he came on Attack of the Show. He was just doing some spot, and he came on, and I went up to him. I was, you know, because I was just being a fan from his SNL skits. Right. I mean, he was so good on that show. Although he was criticized for laughing at his own stuff, but I always think that made him charming. Right. Because again, it's one of those things where you're breaking the fourth wall, and like, yes, we all know we're doing a sketch that's fake. And he would break that, and I guess that's, for some people that's a comedy, don't know, whatever. But I was just a fan of him on SNL, said, hey man, I'm a big fan of you from SNL, so glad to see her on Attack of the Show. And he looked at me and he goes, I'm a fan of you. You're the movie guy. Chris Gore. Like, I couldn't believe he knew my name and knew like what I did. And I was like, oh my God, it totally took me aback. And then I realized like, oh yeah, he was sort of like scoping out, because he was on a contract, because this is before, you know, the new Tonight Show happened, right? Like he was being paid. It's a thing that happens sometimes in television, a holding deal where I'm sure those deals are few and far between now, but he was basically paid for a couple years to not work, and kind of found in Gavin Purcell, like, hey, this is a guy that's tonally like it feels right for what Fallon wanted to do on his show in terms of comedy bits, in terms of leaning into technology, and also making fun of that because it was becoming more a part of our daily lives. And so it was really interesting to see Jimmy come on and then just I mean, he basically poached Gavin. Yeah, he and Lorne Michaels actually.
Yeah, he and Lorne Michaels. Involved. And that was so cool. I just remember thinking, oh, how cool. Do they need to use me for anything?
Yeah, always thinking like, he's since moved on from Fallon, but I think that's a cool legacy.
Yeah, it is cool.
Attack the Show is sort of this creative, ground for like all these other things. And
you know what's funny is I have somewhere in this collection of like shit I've saved of my career over here, I have the Rolling Stone that we were mentioned in. At one point, Attack of the Show was mentioned in Rolling Stone. It was mainly this. It was like, Attack of the Show is the fun, cool, hip technology gaming show on G4 Network. We know we've never heard of it either. In parentheses. Then it says, it's worth it to watch the stunning Olivia Munn lead you through your daily grind of video games, tech, movies, and celebrity interviews. The dudes on the show are mostly forgettable. But check out the show anyway. Like you gotta bring that thing in, man. I was like, remember reading it. I was so excited. They gave me the Rolling Stone in the dressing room, and I was like, I'm like, the dudes are mostly fuck you, I was like, come on.
I think people forget now that there's so much on YouTube. If you have an interest in gaming or film or technology, there is a channel for just that.
Right.
Attack of the Show was, sort of the pop culture version of everything, including like with Blair Butler with comic books. It was sort of it was all of those things meeting on one program. And if you think about it, there was nothing else like it on television. There was no competition. There was no like Entertainment Tonight, but then there's like this show, Access Hollywood or whatever. There was like 5 of those. It's like, no, there was one Attack of the Show.
There was one Attack of the Show. Like you said, there was nothing that combined all those things into one space, and it was well done. It was really well produced, and it was super watchable and fun, and people like would come home to it like a best friend and just be like, click, AOTS is on, awesome.
Well, I remember when I would watch it in front of my computer, so that if they ever mentioned anything that was like, they'll mention a website or somewhere, I would just go to that website.
Right there.
I would go check it out. And
people would follow what we said, like, go check this out. I did, after I left Attack of the Show, I did some videos for Comedy Central, music comedy videos. One was with my grandmother that went kind of viral, and the AOTS called me. They're like, we want to put this on the show. One was, I did this TSA rap video about the TSA jacking all your stuff. It was like a total Lonely Island thing, and that went super viral because Attack of the Show featured it. Kevin was like, Zach Selwyn's up to some new stuff. Let's watch this video of TSA gangsters. Boom, like blew up, 1 million views. Didn't
you do another one about cartoons?
Yeah, that one. That's a Me Too moment right there. I don't know if I did a song. It was one of the first YouTube like musical hits. It was called Kilf Cartoons I'd Like to F. And it's just me about how hot all these sexy cartoons are. It's very sophomoric and easy, and like it's hard to watch for me now. Really hard. Kind of one of those things that I wish wasn't on there. I remember at one point, I think it was a Discovery Channel executive had called me, and they're like, we have some concerns about some of your past videos. Would you mind removing this? And I was like, okay. So like some of that stuff came down. But the AOTS certainly would lead people to our videos. They'd be like, oh, go watch Zach's new thing. That was awesome. You can't get publicity like that. That's like paying an influencer to say something about you now.
The other thing, and I'm just curious if you got sort of drawn into this, is that the other thing that Attack of the Show did, it was very much built on community. They had a thing that was called Viewer Army, right? And it was some mistake or something would happen on the show, like Olivia's Mick Hammer moment.
The Mick Hammer moment's classic.
And then suddenly the next day they're making fun of her. I do remember that Olivia, this used to trip me up, is that they would have to phonetically spell out things in the teleprompter for Olivia, and they would sometimes do that for me, and it would throw me off because it would just throw me off. I'd be like, what's this word?
No, right. I remember there was a lot of phonetic spelling in the prompters for some of the hosts, I'll put it that way. Especially on enunciation, like hit this word hard, hit this word hard. I always remember the MC Hammer, Mick Hammer moment when Olivia was like, Mick Hammer did this, and Kevin just goes, what? Did you say Mick Hammer? What? And then the online, crew, the forums would just light up. I remember all these guys would just like go at each other, and this was their lives, and now that's real. That's what happens out there. But the Mick Hammer thing became a thing. So I had just done a sketch called Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Usher, which was really funny, and Kevin played Stephen Stills or Graham Nash, and then my friend Eli Braden who's on Howard Stern now, played Stephen Stills, and I played Crosby, and Kel Mitchell, Keenan Thompson's old comedy partner from All That, played Usher. So at Comic-Con that year, someone had the idea to do the Mick Hammer thing and hire Kel, who I had brought in for that sketch, to play Mick Hammer, and he dressed up like MC Hammer meets Ronald McDonald and walked around Comic-Con. And I was like, what? I'm like, this is the best. I mean, that's the fun stuff that you would get into. Like, someone would go, hey, we should make a Mick Hammer character. And then it becomes something bigger than it is. And then, of course, Livia's like, oh, I knew it was MC Hammer. I said it on purpose to be funny. I'm like, nah, did you? No, you didn't.
How did you react when you heard that Attack of the Show was being canceled?
Well, when I heard AOTS was being canceled, at first I think I heard that G4 was just being eliminated and becoming the Esquire network. And I don't really know what eventually happened there. But by then, that was 2013. I'd kind of done some other stuff. I was really bummed out. But I was also like, things have to come to an end. And they tried throwing the other hosts in. I wasn't really around after 2009, but when they tried throwing in the new female hosts, and then when Kevin left, things like that, it just started to feel a little less like the show I really enjoyed being a part of and watching. But I do remember when it got canceled, I was like, man, well, welcome to the TV business. Nothing goes on forever, unless Wheel of Fortune. But my last show I did was Kevin's last show. So they brought me back on just to do like a goodbye Kevin moment. And of course I was like, hey, remember those MySpace Girl of the Week things we used to do? He goes, yeah. And I brought out my newborn daughter and I went, so she's yours. That was a good moment to go out on. And I remember after that was like 2012, maybe 2011. I don't know, whatever it was, whenever that last episode was, for the first time since I had left Attack of the Show, my inbox blew up again. My social media blew up again. Like everybody who had remembered me from a few years earlier was just like, Zach, what's up, dude? How are you? Good to see you. Much love. There's a lot of love from the fans.
Yeah, all the different TV gigs that I had done before, nothing sort of had the fandom like Attack of the Show. Like today, I still, when I go to Comic-Con or any convention, people remember. This is a show that like its influence still is being felt. So what is your main takeaway about the show and its legacy?
My main takeaway about Attack of the Show is that it was a perfect show for the time it was on, and that's rare to find. You get something that was growing with its subject matter, and it was really like predicting where we are now in the world. That's lightning in a bottle, and you can't really catch that. For me, it was some of the best, if not the best, few years of television of my life, just having this freedom and this ability to travel the world and to make sketch comedy and to play music on the show and to be funny and to host. And it was almost like a crash course in a variety show in a way, and I look back at it very fondly. I wish I had stuck around a little longer, maybe, but with maybe how it was going at the beginning when all the travel was happening. But you got to move on, and certainly through that I've met and stayed in touch with a lot of great people, yourself included, and I think Attack of the Show is one of those entities that will only come around one time. And I just don't think TV operates the same way anymore. We're not going to see that again, So to be a part of it, it's almost like being a part of SNL or something. Like you were a cool part of a cool show for a couple of seasons and you made your mark and ride on, find the next thing.
But you are part of, you and I are part of a very exclusive club of people who were, involved with the show.
It's a cool club to be a part of. It's like, I would love it if G4 or someone running something said, hey, let's get a reunion together. Let's get Gore and Pereira and O'Neill and Layla and Olivia and Zach, and let's all bring them in and have them talk. Bring in everyone. Kevin, Rose, and you know, Brendan, and even the hosts after them, like Sarah Underwood. Bring them all together. Let's have like a cocktail party, you know? Put it on John River's bill. That's what I always did.
Could you do a quick plea to camera about a reunion?
Yeah. Hey, what's going on, guys? Let's get the reunion together here, man. I've been to my 10-year high school reunion. It sucked. We got to do the 10-year Attack of the Show reunion. Get Pereira, Olivia, you're coming too. Layla Kaylee, what's good? How's it over across the pond? You still hanging out? Will O'Neill, get off the fishing boat, dude. Put down the fish. Come hang out. We're gonna get a reunion going. Gore's coming. We'll get everybody, all the writers, producers. Be a good time. I'm not buying.
Can you give me your final thoughts?
The last thing I'd have to say about Attack of the Show is, wow, who knew that going on an audition to something I had no idea about would end up altering and changing the course of my life in such a good, brilliant, fun, and awesome way, to the point where here we are talking about it, you know, in 2019. I mean, I left the show 10 years ago when I was 21. I mean, that's 10 years. I mean, that's a good amount of time that there's like, I would say now there's starting to be a little more nostalgia for it. You know, there's a lot more people going, oh, I remember that. That was the show of my childhood. You know, there's a guy who works in Tucson at this place. They have a Netflix show. It's called Generation Cool. It's like a vintage thrift store guy. His partner was like, you were on Attack of the Show? No way, man. I used to love that show. You know, he was probably like 7 at the time, so he didn't recognize me. That's why he didn't recognize me. But that was cool. That was a cool moment. I was like, ah. He's like, I used to watch American Ninja Warrior on that. I'm like, that was me. You know? Cool. Fuck. From one audition in Culver City that I didn't really feel like driving to like, here I am with lifelong friends, you know, talking about how much fun it was. I'll take that over any show any day.
And what would you say to the fans of the Attack of the Show?
You know, fans of Attack of the Show, thank you for all the support you gave us when we were on the air and beyond. A lot of times, you know, some of the opinions that you read are not always nice. As we know, the internet is full of sad people sometimes. I feel like Attack of the Show fans were never in that. Mm-hmm. You couldn't really say that in general, but I would say there was certainly some love felt. I mean, I still have friends online, guys who follow me on Twitter who are AOTS fans, you know, and they go, hey man, I remember you. I'm like, cool, awesome. So thank you, fans. Thanks for always being there, and hopefully we'll, you know, show you something that reminds you of how cool it was when we were doing this show.
2 last quick things. One, if you could look to camera and say your name, and then like, I guess your credit, I mean your official credit.
Hi, my name is Zach Selwyn. I was an on-camera personality, I guess, for Attack of the Show from 2006 to 2009. I was in the field a lot, doing a lot of field pieces. I was also a co-host of the show. I also hosted about 9 other pilots on G4, like Free Stuff, American Ninja Warrior Challenge, the 420 specials, things like that. Had a great time doing it. Wish I was doing it right now. Are we getting paid for this?
And then last thing, if you could do sort of, since we're doing this Kickstarter, would you mind, and you don't have to do this.
No, I will.
But would you mind doing a plea for people to contribute to the Kickstarter, that the doc is going to be awesome, like your sort of riff off the top of your head about like what people can expect from the doc, you know, like the different interviews and like the footage and the things that people are going to see. Yeah, this will be separate from, this is not going to be used in the doc.
Right.
But something we may use as
Kickstarter promo.
Yeah. So just whenever you feel comfortable, and you can do whatever you want.
Listen, Chris Gore's making a documentary on Attack of the Show, the greatest TV show to ever be put on the air. It was ahead of its time. It was cool. It taught you things that you didn't even know about. And I bet you first saw Comic-Con on our show. I bet you first saw Toy Fair on our show. I bet you first played a PS3 or a Wii watching our show. Attack of the Show was a great, great time of my life, and I really hope you guys can help us out in donating to this Kickstarter. The doc's going to be incredible. Chris is lining up interviews with all the former hosts, a lot of the producers, people involved in, you know, fans, celebrity fans, people like that, personalities. Me, Zach, I'm in it. I'm funny-ish, but it's going to be great. And look, as a personal Kickstarter gift, I will give away this Star Wars coin. What the hell is this? 30 years of Star Wars coin. Here, you can also have... What else do I got? I got to clean up my desk. A 1-cent residual check. Huh? I'll sign that for you, over to you. You can cash that anywhere you want. And finally, what else can I give you? Here, just have my jewel. I quit this shit anyway. Do it!
That was great.
Have my jewel.
That was great. I don't know if you really want to give those things away, but
Honestly, I don't care.
that was awesome. Dude, thank you.
Right on, man.
That was...
Oh, shit.